Those are the three things that cause muscle hypertrophy through resistance exercise. What they were trying to emphasize, they felt now the heavy weights automatically apply mechanical stress. Just the mere fact of lifting heavy, that's the mechanical stress part of the muscle hypertrophy equation. Now, since they weren't lifting heavy weights, they had to get one of those factors of muscle hypertrophy, at least two of them, muscle damage and metabolic stress. The way to get metabolic stress is to do the higher reps, continuous, no resting between reps, and that increases the metabolic. What is metabolic stress? Basically, metabolic stress.
Hello and welcome. I am Coach Castle, a certified biomechanics expert, nutritionalist, and efficiency coach. Subscribe to this channel to learn the most efficient ways to maximize your muscle growth and recovery, enhance your body, and advance your mind, all using the latest science. Welcome to Castle's Corner.
So anyways, we should mention then on the next subject, so selecting a weight for this particular style of high intensity training. Mike was usually pretty firm about his weight range that he believed. I think there's a couple of ranges you could select, but I usually keep between 5 to 7 reps. What are your thoughts selecting a weight?
I think that would be very good for most people. Now, with the way Dorian Yates did it, is he also stuck to about a range of about maybe 5 to 8 reps in the heavy sets, but he would do a lighter set first, which he wouldn't count. Let's say he was doing heavy leg presses. Now, Yates didn't believe in squats. He felt they were unnecessary. He preferred to do heavy leg presses. He would do his first set with a lighter weight, maybe 15 reps, but he wouldn't count that. To him, now 15 rep set to another person might be a regular set, but because he didn't go to failure, he didn't do maximum intensity, Yates didn't even count that as a set. He called it his warm-up.
Yep,
Then he would follow that. Yeah, then he would follow that by 2 sets of heavyweight, 5 to 8 reps. That and to failure, that would be his actual. That he would count as his workout. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of times, Yates when he said he would do 2 sets, he actually did 3. Sometimes he would do 2 warm-up sets before he'd go to the heavyweight. So, even though he said he did 2 sets, theoretically he was doing 4, but he didn't count the warm-up sets. So, yeah, that's a good range. That's a good range to do. But there is another system, I might as well mention it now, where a couple of years ago, it's kind of interesting. They were trying to figure out, you have a lot of older people have a medical condition called sarcopenia, which literally is a loss of lean mass with age. It comes from being inactive for many years. You see, as we mentioned earlier, the body from head to toe, including the skeletal muscles, work on a use it or lose it system. If you don't use your muscles, they atrophy. What happens is the motor neuron that serves muscles, that activates them or innervates them, literally shrivel up. When they shrivel up, the muscle atrophies. Now, this is very bad when you get older, because without the muscles, without full use of your muscles, I should say, you lose mobility to the point where you get such a degree of frailty that a lot of times you have to be put in a nursing home, because these people are literally can't even feed themselves or drink. They're that weak. So these scientists at Tufts University were trying to come out with, they say, what can we do to help these older people that already have sarcopenia? Is there any type of therapy we can give them that'll somehow restore, if not a lot of muscle size, at least strength, so they get more mobility, so they can walk again and move again? So somebody came up with the idea of having to use light weights, because these people couldn't use anything more. I mean, we're talking about 2 pounds, 1 pound. So they started one study involved leg extensions, for the frontal thighs. They used a ridiculously light weight, something like 3 or 4 pounds, right? But they made it progressive. And interestingly enough, they had the old people do as many reps as they can to failure. These are old, frail people, right? They didn't know what would happen. They didn't know, because when you get older, muscle stem cells called satellite cells, they tend to disappear also from inactivity. And those are needed for muscle hypertrophy and repair. And the idea was, wait, maybe they can't respond. Maybe the satellite cells are so gone, are so diminished that no amount of resistance exercise will help. Well, they were very surprised to find that not only the old people not only were able to do the reps, they were able to gradually add weight. And after a while, old men that had to use a walker to walk, throw away their walker. They were able to move. It was like a miracle. And then they did, but the key is they had him do very light weights, like 20% of 1 rep max. But here's the key: they did higher reps, 20 to 30 reps, to failure. They had to experiment to find the right weight for these older people to use. They found that not only did the old people get stronger, people 90 years old, this blew away the physiology books, because all the physiology books said you can't gain any muscle past the age of 70. People 90 years of age started to put on muscle. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they could have competed in the Mr. Olympia, but to start putting any muscle on at 90 that startled them. The scientists didn't expect that.
I don't know if it's just because of, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know if it's just because of what I know or whatever, but that's not surprising to me with anything. I mean, because humans need to adapt. We adapt. I mean, if you go to space, you lose your bone mass. You go under the ocean. I mean, we know how these things happen. I mean, even if you're old, I've trained countless old clients who could barely move before I taught them how to breathe and move. And then a couple of weeks later, then a couple of months later, they're 20 years younger, basically.
Right. Yeah, but you have to understand, in other words, these people were in terrible shape. And the thing is, they were extremely weak. And, the prevailing thought in science at the time was that satellite cell exhaustion, the satellite cells get exhausted past a certain age. When that happens, you can't repair and you can't build the muscle. So an increase in muscle strength and size is unlikely. In other words, they were hoping only to increase mobility in these people. They didn't expect them to get stronger or have any kind of muscle size gain. They were hoping that somehow they can more or less kind of open up the dead motor neurons. So at least these people would have more mobility and be able to move, feed themselves, dress themselves, and so on. They didn't expect the muscle gains and the strength gains. See, so they looked at those old people and they said, I wonder if this will work for young people that don't have sarcopenia. So they took a group of guys in their 20s, young guys, healthy. They divided them to two groups. One group lifted heavy weights, 90% of 1 rep max. That's heavy. That's where you can barely do 5 or 6 reps, right? Now, when you do that, you automatically, as I said earlier, work the type 2B fast twitch fibers, right? That will definitely make you stronger and make your muscles grow. The other group, they had them lift a weight, just like the old people, only 30% of 1 rep max. That's less than a warm-up weight. That's light. But like the old people, they had the young men, again, in their 20s, do only 1 or 2 sets, 20 to 30 reps, continuous motion, no stopping between sets. They had them do it to failure. Again, they had to experiment to find the right way to go to failure. What they found was, again, to me, as a long-time resistance trainer, meaning training myself, I was shocked to find the results of the study showed that the young men who lifted baby weights but did higher reps to failure made the same muscle size gains as the guys lifting very heavy weights. Same muscle size gains. But the key, this is what the study researchers said, you have to go to failure. Because what they noticed with the light weights I'm talking about, what they noticed is that if you didn't go to failure, let's say you just did 20, 30 reps and stopped way short of failure, nothing. All you would do is get muscle endurance, no muscle gains at all. That was the key. So if you're going to use that system, meaning lighter weights to fail, to 20 higher reps, 20 to 30 reps to failure, you have to go to failure or near failure. What I mean by near failure is maybe 1 or 2 reps short of total muscle failure. Either one, you got to go that way or nothing happens at all. Now you might say to me, well, wait a minute, why the 20 to 30 reps? Why couldn't they just go to failure at 10 reps or 8 reps? Well, what they wanted to do was develop, it had to do with there's certain principles that are involved in muscle hypertrophy. One of them is called metabolic stress. The other one's mechanical tension, and the other one is muscle damage. Those are the 3 things that cause muscle hypertrophy through resistance exercise. What they were trying to emphasize, they felt, now the heavy weights automatically apply mechanical stress. Just the mere fact of lifting heavy, that's the mechanical stress part of the muscle hypertrophy equation. Now, since they weren't lifting heavy weights, they had to get one of those factors of muscle hypertrophy, at least 2 of them, muscle damage and metabolic stress. The way to get metabolic stress is to do the higher reps, continuous, no resting between reps, and that increases the metabolic. What is metabolic stress? Basically, metabolic stress is the production, involves the production of, when you work out, glucose, all these things, they produce fatigue byproducts like lactate, for example. It turns out that some of these fatigue byproducts like lactate, they're anabolic signaling factors. They turn on hormones in muscle like insulin, like growth factor 1, that stimulate muscle growth. That's the key. See, so in other words, the system is, again, lighter weights, higher reps, at least 20 to 30 to failure or near failure. And this is a very good system to use. I always recommend this to, let's say, guys who will come to me, they were bodybuilders in their youth when they were 20s, and they got married and, went to work and gave up training. Some of these guys haven't trained for 30, 40 years, but they decide now, the kids are growing, they look at themselves, they're falling apart. They have hypertension diseases related to lack of muscle, heart disease, whatever, diabetes. They want to improve their health. They say to me, Jerry, I want to start training. I'm 50 years old. I'm afraid of injury. What should I do? I tell them to start with that system. Start with the high reps, lighter weights. You don't need a lot of sets. I'm talking 1 or 2 sets. That's it per exercise. But you got to go to failure, near failure. The chances of injury are almost zero, and you will gain muscle size.
I should interject here and actually say that, I have quite a few older clients. I actually teach some classes with older clients as well. And I can testify that this system is highly, highly effective with the higher repetitions. And on top of that, if you guys are learning new movements, or you're learning, let's say, the perfect biomechanical exercises, which you all should know by now, but if you're not learning that stuff, you should be. But once you guys learn that stuff, and as you're learning it, you should be following this system, because then you can build a neurological connection with the muscle much better. You can learn the movement much faster because you're practicing it more times. And then you can switch over to more high intensity failure training, getting the tendons and strength and everything else with it.
Right.